Welcome back to Shit Creek Survivors, where we explore stories of resilience, the tools people built through hard times, and a dose of hope for anyone currently wading through their own Shit Creek. Today, we talk with Rachel Krentzman about what it feels like when the church walks away and trauma lives in the body and soul. She shares her story, including family loss, spiritual abandonment, and how on the inside, we are all whole and worthy. Rachel also discusses the practices that helped her stay resilient, including yoga, mindfulness, and insights from her new book, As Is. Here we go. We just believe in sharing stories of resilience, because I found out by even just going to AA meetings where I was first getting there, I'm like, I don't belong here. I'm not like you. But then I started hearing truths and I was like, oh, I can relate to that. Or, wow, that sounds similar to something I've done or thought, And I started kind of opening the door, if you will, and setting my ego aside. And when you set your ego aside, I found that you're way more open to absorbing information. You're way less sensitive to, oh, don't look at me that way, or I'm perfect the way I am. You know what I mean? You're just like, okay, I'm not perfect. Let's get to work, that sort of stuff. And so we believe in planting seeds whose shade we never plan to sit under, which is, I think, a cool way of saying, just basically scattering the seeds and hoping that they hit fertile ground, and we can't do much beyond that. So I guess we'll just kind of jump into it. Rachel, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm 54. I live currently in Israel, but I'm from Canada, and I also lived in San Diego for many years. And I just wrote a memoir which kind of traces a little bit of that path from Canada to San Diego to Israel, which are very, very different places and very
Yeah.
different lifestyles. Um, and I guess the story behind it is really a story of life falling apart in certain ways and kind of going through a process, I would say, a process of self-discovery. I'm a physical therapist. I'm a yoga therapist now, and I'm a psychotherapist. I guess I'm
Oh,
a
wow.
therapist and a lot of therapists. Um, Primarily, my focus is working on people with pain. Um, Mostly back pain and musculoskeletal pain. But um, in my work, I discovered that a lot of pain is not really related to tissue damage or injury, but very emotional. And that's why I went on to study psychotherapy. So I kind of speak to my own experience, and I work with people who went through things that I did. And I just believe in the healing power of working with the body and mind together, not
Yeah.
separate.
Yeah, I agree with that. I found that a lot of my good processing was done while either walking or even like working out, or even doing it prior or just after, using it as a way to kind of like get that energy out. So I'm very interested in what you're doing. And you said that you help people with back issues, and I read that you actually had some back issues yourself. Is
hmm
that correct?
That's
Yep.
correct. I had a herniated disc, have a scoliosis, a small curve in my spine from the age of 16, which led, I guess, to the disc herniation at some point, um, which was another sort of changing moment in my life when I ended up kind of flat on the floor for a few weeks.
Yeah.
And I was actually a yoga teacher and a physical therapist at that point. And had to really make changes to the way I moved and to how I worked with my body.
Hmm.
And instead of being very competitive, being much more attentive and much more mindful and intelligent with movement. So yeah, I had to learn the real way. But I think what I tell my patients, and I assume what you guys probably talk about on the show, is that sometimes the things that happen to us, at the time I didn't really appreciate it very much. It wasn't pleasant, it was painful, and it was um, difficult, very, very difficult. But it pushed me in a new direction. It pushed me in the direction of less pushing, less achieving, less competitiveness, and more compassion for myself and for my body. And I hope to teach people the same thing.
Yeah.
There you go.
It almost sounds like quality over quantity. You know what I mean? Instead of rushing to get everything done and picking something. And that makes a lot of sense to me because if I'm running around trying to do 10 things, I'll freak out the majority of the time and maybe get some of them done. But if I come up with a clear, crisp list of like, these are the 2 things I'm doing today, then I can put some time into it and care about it and kind of, you know, do what I need to do with it compared to just getting it that's just crazy done kind of deal. If that makes any sense. Now I do want to hear about if you're willing to share. I want to hear about
Hmm.
your father and that experience when you were young. I believe that your father was a rabbi in Montreal.
Yeah, exactly. I was born and raised in Montreal. My father is from Connecticut, but he was a rabbi, and he moved to Montreal before we were born. So he worked in many congregations. He was somewhat of a public figure. He used to speak on the high holidays. He presented himself as a very upstanding, he was kind of a tough character, very true to the letter of the law.
Mm,
The Jewish law was very important to him. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And was that tough growing up with someone because a lot of us don't experience that, someone who's very bound to the book and very, rule stringent on that. How would you explain that to someone who didn't have that experience? Is it stifling or is it like freeing?
Well,
Is it?
when you grow up with it, you don't know anything else.
Mm,
Right.
So, so for me, I was born into it. I was raised doing all the holidays, doing all the rules. So it was truth. It was the truth for me, and that's all I knew. And then I was sent to a very religious school with all girls, um, who also, it was even more Orthodox than my family. So I was kind of, thrust into that. And that, when you grow up in it, that's the only thing you know.
hmm.
So I didn't consider it stifling. I thought it was the only way to be. It was sort of the right way to be, in
Right.
my mind. And then what happened happened. And what happened was there was a kind of a big trauma and a big shock when my father was arrested. We got a call that he was in jail. We had no idea why. And then we found out that he was busted for selling heroin to an undercover police officer,
Oh,
Oh,
no.
wow.
which not only is it a criminal offense, but the crime of drugs and the crime of heroin, of all drugs, was just kind of mind blowing because I came from such a clean, very, we didn't even drink, we didn't smoke, we didn't do the basic stuff that was legal. So, um, hearing that, it was kind of shocking because my family had no idea.
Hmm.
And I kind of, in my book, in my memoir, go into understanding maybe what led to that understanding, the psychology of my family and how things
Hmm.
worked in my family and my culture. But what it did do was questioned everything that I believed in, because all of a sudden, this man who was so
Right.
adamant and so critical and so, strong about the rules and the laws and things that we should do and shouldn't do, was not
Shattered.
living what he preached.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so um, I would say not right away. Initially, there was shock and, just kind of getting through the court dates and getting through him going to jail, which he did do. He served some time, and getting through all of the trauma that, the impact it had on my family. But my inner world fell apart because I started to question, why am I doing all this? Do I
Yeah.
really believe in it? Is this the truth? A lot of big questions came up.
Yeah. So what did you do?
Well, I was very disappointed I should say, by the community, which was I guess, my support system. We were only in the Jewish community because it was very insular.
Hmm.
And if you're very Orthodox, you don't end up being friends with people of different cultures, races, religions, because
Yeah.
there's a fear of being influenced. Um, so what I did, and when he was arrested, there was a big backlash by the community. We were in the newspaper. The other rabbis and other people in the community were very angry. They felt that he had kind of tarnish the name of Jews in Montreal. And so we were sort of rejected as a family by the whole community. And so I thought, wow, it's interesting that we are taught to be, listen to God and be godly people. And yet the people that are following these rules were the most unkind and also a lot of gossip and just were very not compassionate. And I
Yeah.
started to question, are these the people I want to be like? If
Right.
this is what this type of religion creates, do I really want to be a part of this? And so I started to secretly on my own um, stray a little bit from the path. Now you're gonna laugh because you'll think it's funny when I tell you what that means. What was the worst thing I did? Was probably I ate a muffin at a coffee shop that wasn't kosher.
Oh.
Um, that was a big deal.
Well,
Now you have
that's
to
cool.
understand where I was coming from, but
Yeah, I
No,
think
I
that's
can
really
I get
started to
it.
cool.
do little
And
things.
how
I
old were you
started
when this
maybe
was?
I was 23 when it happened. So
Okay.
I was actually married already because we get married very young.
Mhm.
And I was newly married and we really didn't know what to do with all of this that had just happened. And I also had just started university for physical therapy. So I started to hang out with my non-Jewish friends. And so I would like smoke a couple cigarettes every now and then, have a muffin. Um, so I used to wear skirts only. I started to wear jeans. I used to wear
Huh.
my head covered. I took off my head covering. So little by little, what I started to do is question all the things I was doing just for the sake of religion and
Mhm.
deciding and started to let it go bit by bit. But it was a very slow process because I was so embedded in the community that I couldn't really, um, it was very hard to pull away.
Yeah,
Yeah, but they kind of pushed
Eventually,
you away a little bit. I
yeah,
mean, you weren't the one
yeah,
selling the heroin, and you got treated like you were the drug dealer.
no, you're right. You're right. My
that's
whole
one
family sort of was punished in a way.
Yeah.
Um,
that's
maybe
one of
not
the
actively, but yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's one of the scariest things sometimes is you think you're in a safe environment where if you were to fall, you would be caught. But then something happens and the promises don't come true, because humans are going to fail. You know what I mean? And um yeah, that's a scary moment when you believe you're on a team and then it turns out you're getting kicked
Hmm.
off the team and that can break your heart. You know what I mean? Because you imagine I would never do this to you. Like I would help you in this moment. I need help to an extent.
Right.
That's what I can come up with. Yeah.
I would totally agree with what you just said. It was exactly like that. It felt um when I felt like if something bad were to happen, you would have a safety net. And in fact it was the opposite. I feel like the ground, was pulled out from underneath me and I was completely alone in my
Yeah.
pain. And I had no one to talk to within my community. And the only people that I could talk to were the people who were less judgmental were the people not within my community.
Hmm.
So I found
Yeah.
more compassion there. And of course, if I was suffering, I'm not going to go to the people who are hurting me or,
Yeah.
not very helpful. So I guess it did start to open my eyes and I started to question a lot of things that I was taught. Um,
Hmm.
and that set me on a path of really
Hmm.
searching for truth, searching for who I was, searching for my role as a woman specifically, um, in a culture that I felt was a little bit uh, put women in the background. And, I
Hmm.
wasn't really encouraged to be too loud, to have a voice. And my husband didn't like that too much, and neither did my community. And so eventually we got divorced and I left the religion completely once I was able to separate from him because he stayed within the community and that's what he wanted and I didn't. And
Okay.
then I was free to really explore. And that's when I got into yoga and movement, um, and even therapy and even also going to 12-step programs for some of my own behaviors that were not related to alcohol or drugs, but more codependency
Yeah.
and sex and love addiction, which I talk about in the book.
Yeah.
Um, and so, yeah, a lot of things changed after that. I started surfing, I started swimming in the ocean, I started to discover nature, things that I just wasn't able to do in the religious community as a woman.
That's amazing. Being able to step out and be like, I'm not only am I stepping out, but I'm gonna live a little bit here. You know what I mean? Like not
Yeah.
yeah, feeling closed off to even surfing. You know what I mean? That's so cool that you're out there, you're living, taking the day on, that
Yeah,
sort of
yeah.
deal. And so as
Hmm.
you grew, is that what kind of inspired you to help other people along the way? Were you like, wow, there's power to this, there's other people's in this situation, that sort of motivation?
I would say that, because I feel lucky that I had gone to school for physical therapy. It wasn't my intention to kind of take this path, but I was in a helping profession already, and I feel lucky that I did that.
Hmm.
Um, so I already had one foot in the door in terms of helping people. But when I got into the yoga and more of the mindfulness and more of the understanding of pain, not just physical pain, but emotional pain, and started to really heal myself through yoga and my own back injury, that's when things really came together because I was able to combine that with the physical therapy that I had from before.
Yeah.
And I was positioned to really help people with a new approach
Oh, wow.
rather than just working on the body.
Yeah.
So you were saying that emotional pain will show up as physical pain as well?
Yes.
So I'm
Yes.
in pain a lot and I have a lot of emotional pain, but physical pain. Let's talk about that. Like, how did you even sort that out? That like if you that are you saying we store that emotion?
Yeah.
Okay. And
Yes.
and how does that work?
Is this news to you, or is this
It
something
is news.
you
It
have
well,
heard?
and
Okay.
yeah, I mean, we've never had anyone kind of speak on it on here.
Okay.
But yeah, that's new.
Well, it's pretty well known now, I would say, even backed by science and evidence. But, 25 years ago, or I think it's almost 30 years that I graduated from physical therapy school, it wasn't really talked about so much. So often, we would see patients who had pain, but nothing wrong with them, and we would say it's in your head. It's kind of, oh, they're just making it up, but
Right.
it's not. So we now know from pain science that pain is in the brain, not in the head. Not that you're making it up, that the pain is real, but that chronic pain is really more of a memory in the brain that kind of replays itself, even if nothing is wrong. And
Oh,
that stress and trauma specifically manifest in the body because our body and our mind are not separate.
right.
So I give you an example. You guys are both in the military. You were in the military, Dennis, and you're a police officer, right?
Hmm.
So let's say you're, in a situation where there's danger, right? There's someone firing or you have to be very like poised for action.
Hmm.
So we know in science that that causes the fight or flight response, which is what we call the sympathetic nervous system. The nervous system goes on alert, high alert. You guys are
Yeah.
familiar with that, maybe not the words, but the experience.
Oh
And
yeah,
one of
for
the
sure.
things you have to do, right, is be very vigilant at that moment when things are, dangerous. So you're going to become you're going to start scanning your environment. You're going to become very aware, right? Well, the muscles that do that are the neck muscles, right? If you're going to
Mm,
become tense and tight and start looking around very carefully at everything that's moving or kind of, going
yeah,
around you, you're looking for danger. All of the tiny muscles of the neck are directly linked with that system of fight or flight.
yeah,
Similarly, if you have to fight, let's say you're being attacked by a bear or someone with a gun, then your muscles that are poised for running or fighting are going to become tense and tight because you need to be ready and on guard.
yeah.
So there are very specific muscles that are linked with the nervous system, and most of them have to do with the neck and the spine. They cause neck pain and back pain, for example.
Okay.
It makes sense, right? So
Yeah.
these muscles
It
are,
does.
it's hardwired into our nervous system. And so when we have these tight muscles or tense muscles, it can be from mental stress. It's not just now when you're at war or when you're in a dangerous situation, it's appropriate that these muscles are tight, but then as soon as it's done, they're supposed to relax, right?
Right.
But
Well,
if I
continued
feel
exposure to it can,
either
yeah. As a police
in the
officer,
memory of it,
yeah,
like you said,
yeah, that
PTSD,
too.
kind of the memory of it. And
Yeah.
also, even if I didn't experience trauma, for example, um, if I perceive, if let's say I'm at work and I have a deadline and I have to meet a deadline and my boss is
Hmm.
on top of me and yelling at me and there's a lot of stress, um, the nervous system doesn't know the difference between being at war in, Afghanistan or Iraq, or that you have a deadline to meet, at your job.
Yeah.
The nervous system
Right.
just knows on or off.
Right.
So it's not just stress or danger, it's perceived stress or danger.
Mm.
So
Right.
you could be at a cocktail party and just feel really like unsafe for some reason if there's someone there that really triggers you, or, something is happening that reminds you of something. And whether you perceive that you're in danger or not, or you're in actual danger, the body responds the same. It doesn't
Hmm.
distinguish between real or not real danger. So basically,
That's
our
a
thoughts
real good
create
point.
tension in our body.
I totally agree with that. Totally agree with that. And
Yeah, and that's a really good way you said it too. And I want to remember that for future, because I remember one of our first comments in one of our earliest videos. And then she deleted the comment right afterwards, but it always stuck with me because she said something about how she had just got diagnosed with PTSD and didn't feel like she deserved it because she wasn't a police officer and she didn't go to war. And I wanted to respond to her so quickly. I had something to do. I ran and did it, came back, and the comment was gone. So I'm trying to always remind people not to compare your trauma stories to our trauma stories or anybody else's trauma stories. And the way you just said it makes it perfect. Like your sympathetic nervous system is going to have reactions to these outliers of stress, whether they're perceived or real, whether they're police or military related, or whether they're high stress work environment related. You're going to have these same biological, physical reactions. So acknowledge it and address it and talk to it and find your paddle to help get you through these moments. So thank you very much for saying it that way. You clarified it really well for myself, even.
I found that
You're welcome.
happens like with my emotions. So if I get triggered, not only am I getting stressed like physically and like looking around, but now I'm imagining scenarios that could go down where I have to take action. And again, this is PTSD. It's like forecasting what's going to go wrong here, what's going to go wrong here, what do I need to do, what do I need to do, like where are the exits, where would I tell my wife to go, all those kinds of things.
Right.
And you create these stories, but what happens is the emotion that comes with that story is very real. Like I can totally understand what you're saying. Like your brain doesn't understand the difference between the imaginary one you just put together, and because that's where you're living in the majority of the time. You're trying to forecast, trying to stay safe, and yeah, and then you just wear yourself out, and especially initially, I think that's where you see a lot of people get triggered and then they take action that maybe they shouldn't, is because so much is going on so fast and no one really understands that until they kind of like sit with whatever they've been through in a certain amount of ways. But I don't know, that's just very
Talking to
interesting,
them.
Well,
you
the
create.
first step, I think, is to understand that, like you said, Dennis, that it's valid and that the same centers of the brain fire when I really am in stress and trauma or when I think about it. It doesn't really matter what's happening.
Yeah.
So the same brain centers are functioning. And so you're right, we need to be more compassionate to people who have their own types of stress that they may not think is valid. And this, by the way, includes what I went through, which is sort of what we now call complex PTSD, which is not that one bad thing happened, even though one bad thing happened, but it's on top of a lot of other little miniature traumas. And that can be just family stuff. It doesn't have to be, a war. or something, very dramatic. It can be lots of little things where you're bullied in, school. And then when you're older, somebody puts you down, and then, all kinds of things build up. But the
Yeah.
brain is the same and the responses are the same. And so it's really important that people understand that about trauma, and they understand that the body does hold it, and pain is one effect of trauma. It's not the only. There are many, obviously, many other effects that are emotional. And the reason that people go to substances often is because the pain or the distress is so bad that the substances calm that the nerves. They calm
Mhm.
it, and the disturbing feelings you're having are so bad that you're like, I don't care what happens in the future. I just want to feel better right now.
Right. It's
Nailed it.
almost like it's a cure. It's almost like it's a cure for yourself and not actually a substance abuse.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
is. Well, we're trying to we're
That's why we
trying
call it
to
self-medicating. Yeah.
self-soothe. It's
Hmm.
like a baby, putting a pacifier in a baby's mouth. It's just soothing. The problem is that these behaviors become problematic in themselves.
yeah,
But if we
absolutely.
understand that, then we understand that we can't really judge anyone for
Mhm.
their
Right.
choices. Um, because some addictions are socially acceptable and others are not.
Yep.
And,
Yeah.
like overworking is socially acceptable, but it's an addiction, just the same
Yep.
as alcohol or drugs, in my mind.
Yeah.
I agree with you 100%.
Yeah. It's whatever's giving you that dopamine, that feeling, that
Hmm.
that push. Yeah. Totally agree with that. So when someone is going, so when someone comes to you and they're experiencing pain that may be attached to, emotional pain, what's like a beginning sort of action or session you would do with them to kind of open the door? Is there anything like that?
Yeah, will really depend on where they are at, because some
Right.
people will come with like, I don't want to talk about anything. I just want you to fix my my body.
Yeah.
So I work with people where they are.
Hmm.
Okay, that's super important.
Yeah.
But always coming from the place of, being open to what comes up. And I just really listen to
Hmm.
what they say. Um, because in the listening, you'll hear more about the story, and the story usually, carries more than just the physical. I always ask permission if it's okay if today I actually did that. I said, can I tell you something I'm noticing that you keep saying over and over again to one of my patients? So I would not, I don't like to tell people, oh, you're doing this because blah, blah, blah.
Right.
I don't want to, all I can say is what I notice or what I observe. But
Right.
this comes after many, many years of learning how to listen deeply, learning how to be present with people.
Hmm.
Um, and I would say that the first step, like you're asking, is really the awareness, just like everything else, right? It's just
Yeah.
to say, I didn't know I was doing this. Maybe this is something that's happening.
Yeah.
Um, and having a conversation about it,
Hmm.
and me not telling them, because I can't assume to know what someone else is going through, but to suggest, this is what I see, this is what I notice. How do they feel about that?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's good
Let them come
therapy.
to their own conclusion.
Yeah, I found through therapy, it's helped me a lot. And initially, I think I was so scared to go into it. I didn't want to be told what I was doing wrong. I didn't want to be told this. And that didn't happen, because I had a good therapist. She just listened. At first, it was a ministry of presence. Then it was like whatever I was willing to slice off. And then once I knew I was safe doing that, I was willing to slice a little bit more off. And then it just kind of went. But she's never telling me, you should go left or you should go right. It's more like, why would you go left or why would you go right, like kind of just deepening the thought pattern or the process. So it's very, very helpful. Thank you for what you do, and the fact that you do it as well as doing the physical stuff. Oh my gosh, like we need to duplicate you and put you in every city
Yeah,
because
it's a lot of years of studying.
yeah, I bet.
It's a lot
And
of
then
a lot of degrees.
yeah, but they all seem to come together, which is amazing.
Yeah,
You're able to kind of
yeah.
push them all together. So tell us about the new book that you put out, and why did you put out a new book?
So I wrote two books already on back pain and yoga.
Hmm.
And then after I finished writing my professional books, I knew kind of deep down that this book that I just put out and published was really the book that I wanted to write next.
Okay.
And this book is not a professional book in terms of instructional or, academic in any way. It's a very personal story, and it's the story of, it starts with the arrest of my father, how my family reacted to it, which was also very, very dysfunctional. And then sort of this process that I went through, in questioning my place in the world and questioning my marriage, my religion, moving from Canada to the US and then from the US to Israel, trying to make some peace with my culture and my background, and
Mm-hmm.
also my own struggles, challenges with relationships, with, I I realized that I was always looking for approval from my father, who essentially not only betrayed, our family in a sense, or kind of, I don't think he betrayed us, but he disappointed us and
Mm-hmm.
put us through a lot. I know now that he was suffering too, and he was going through his own process,
Yeah.
Yeah.
but at the same time, it affected me in the sense that he rejected me at one point when I went to visit him in jail. He told me he never wanted to see me again when I was trying to help and I was trying to communicate. And I think that was a bigger trauma than him going to jail, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, because I
Did he
opened
say it
up.
like out of embarrassment, or was he saying like because what you were doing?
I
Like,
asked for an explanation. I asked for the truth. I
okay,
asked for something more real. He never apologized for what he did. He never took account. He didn't never took any accountability for the pain it caused me and the pain it caused my family.
Mm-hmm.
He
okay,
never said anything about it. He just kind of pretended like it didn't happen, and we would sit and talk about nothing. Like I would visit him in jail. I was like a young girl who had never been to a jail before in my life, from a
Yeah.
very upper middle class neighborhood. And I was, you know, sitting in jail with a bunch of, people that I never thought I would be in the same room with, all kinds of
Yeah.
bikers, all kinds of gang members. And I'm this little kind of girl from private school sitting there across from my rabbi father, and he wouldn't tell me anything at all. And it wasn't just to tell me what he did, it was just to open up and be real. He wasn't, he
yeah.
wasn't capable. And so I asked for more. I asked for, for him to be real with me. And he basically just told me that he never wants to see me again. So what I
Oh, wow.
learned in that moment was that if I ask for what I need, which was very, I think, reasonable, or if I'm vulnerable, then I will be rejected. And that was a deep belief system that
Mm-hmm.
um, I learned, that shaped my life, shaped all
Yeah.
my choices, my behaviors, as well as the lots of opinions I had about men, actually, and their lack of compassion, or that they, I believed that men didn't have feelings because my dad didn't show any feelings. There's
Right.
a lot of things that I had to unlearn. So it set me off, obviously, on a path in finding yoga, and that's what I write about in the book.
Mm-hmm.
And through yoga specifically, I feel like it gave me a way of feeling okay that was healthy, and helped
Yeah.
me
Very
connect
good.
to something deeper inside myself other than my story of what happened to me, or,
Right.
behaviors. It just kind of brought me back to a more centered place. It didn't last very often. It was fleeting, but it was there.
Yeah.
But the more you practice, the more it kind of sticks.
Mm-hmm.
And then I realized that this is something everyone needs, I think, and
Yeah.
started to work
Agreed.
on teaching and combining it with physical therapy. And I opened a clinic that combined physical therapy and yoga in San Diego, California.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's not that I was cured, I think I was still going through my own process. But the book
Yeah.
really traces the whole journey from this arrest, this rejection, um, into kind of abandoning my religion, being free in California, trying all kinds of things, which you can do in
Yeah.
California because it's very liberal.
Yeah.
And then, eventually making a decision to move to Israel, and just the process of growth and transformation. That's what this book is about.
Are you revisiting your faith back in Israel at all?
Part of why I came here was to be near I have a brother and sister who moved here.
Oh,
But
cool.
I think a part of it was to reconnect to my culture because I had sort of rejected everything, which is
Hmm.
Yeah.
also not so healthy. It was also the good and the
Right.
bad that I had just like walked walked away from. And I do believe I was trying to find some peace with it. How can I be Jewish? How can I be, I was so immersed in the culture until
Yeah.
from the age of 0 to 27 that it's such
Yeah.
a part of me. And then I just left it and something felt empty. So I was trying to figure out a way to reconcile that. I do believe that's why I came here. I'm not religious. I never went back to the religion, but I'm hoping, and I think I did find a place where I'm peaceful with it and that I
That's
don't
awesome.
judge other people
Well,
for what
yoga is
they
pretty
decide.
spiritual in itself.
Yeah, I much more connect to that as a path of spirituality, and it works for me. But I also feel like I've, you know, um, made some peace with my culture and my religion as well.
Good.
You find that balance.
It's
Hmm.
funny. I think for a long time in life, we're told who we are. You are this person and you act this way and this is what you wear and this is what you don't. And you are told who you are. And until you kind of break out into the world and figure out really who you are, not who you're told you're supposed to be, and you kind of like live authentically to yourself, you start finding a little bit of peace. Another thing I heard you say is, just those moments where you're able to use yoga. I use meditation. And again, it's a fleeting bit, but if I meditate and I stay on it and my routine's right, there's peace to be found in that, just connecting with your
Yeah.
body. I do like body scans, grounding, that sort of stuff. And it really helps with my PTSD because it's more about being here, right now, compared to letting myself go to the past or project to the history. So that's a funny way to think of it. But if you're always pinging back and forth, just being able to sit in one spot for a little bit and just have a moment is super freeing, super freeing. That's super, super
But
cool.
that's yoga. That's yoga, by the way.
Yeah.
And I don't think yoga itself, like all the postures and all the movements, are for everyone. But I do believe that most traditions, like Buddhism and yogic traditions and Eastern traditions, they
Yeah.
all lead to the same place. So anything that's based in being present, being mindful, and
Yeah.
Inner peace.
yeah,
It's whatever
all
works
of
for
it.
you.
Exactly. And it can even be prayer, can be another way.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
Absolutely. And
Lots of
it's,
different paddles.
yeah, it's whatever works for you because I might use meditation where I lay down. But my wife, I've talked to her a bunch about it and she's like, I'm just not capable of doing that. But guess what she started doing recently? Yoga. Because she's like, I have to be doing something. You know what I mean?
So
So the
that I'm
fact that
more
she's,
like that. Yeah,
yeah,
I need to, for me, movement, I found, it helped me discharge a lot of stress, and I couldn't sit
yeah,
still and meditate unless I moved and kind of got out some energy because I have a lot of energy inside.
yeah,
But some people don't need that. Some people can just sit.
yeah.
But the intention of yoga and all the movement is just to meditate, to be honest, to eventually get to a place where you can meditate.
And it's not easy. Yoga is not easy.
Oh, no, not
I've
at
been to
all.
yoga classes and had my butt handed to me. You know what I mean? Like it just worked me over muscles you don't think you use. You got to stretch everything out. I mean, but I get it. If you're meditating at the same time of moving, that might make things easier. I might have to look into this because
But that's what yoga should be like. I think it's been it came from India predominantly, but coming to West and North America, it became much more of a fitness
Yeah.
They became much more focused on the physical aspects and not on the meditative aspects. So that's why people
Oh,
think
Just-
that it's just a movement. But the truth is, in yoga, there used to be very little movement. It used to be much more of a meditation centered practice. There were a few movements in the
yeah.
very beginning.
I know the breathing or the breath work has helped her too, because it's weird when you don't realize you're always panicked and running around how tight your chest actually is until someone teaches you like, no, you're not even breathing right, man. Like you're only taking it in like right here. You need to let it open. And what's weird is when you do it, it's like a magic pill and suddenly you're relaxed after 3 like proper breaths and you're like, what? Like this
Do
works.
you
But
know
what's fun?
why? Do you know
Why?
how it works? It's the same
Is
as
it
what I told you in the beginning. It's all the nervous system.
yeah.
Like I said, remember, if you're stressed out, your muscles get tight. Well, if you're stressed out, your breath gets short, right? You
Okay.
start to panic, you breathe short. Well, guess what? If you breathe short, it sends a message to your nervous system to be stressed. So it
Yeah.
works both ways. So you can affect your stress by breathing. If you slow your breathing down, it will send a message to the nervous system that I'm okay, I'm safe.
Hmm.
Um,
There you go.
and you can affect the mind and the mood by breathing, but you
Yeah.
can also affect your breathing by your thoughts and your mood. It goes both ways.
For
So the
sure.
breathing is directly linked with the nervous system.
And the
Because
one I'm doing
what
recently,
happens when you're in fight or flight? You're breathing short, you're trying to get a lot of oxygen, you're hyperventilating because you
yeah,
need more oxygen. And that's okay if you're running away from a bear, but if you're not,
right.
your body still responds as if.
Yeah. Yeah. And then it has to kind of like, if you sort of, I've found in that moment when you're super triggered, you got to figure out something to do with that energy. It helps, to kind of like leak it out, if you will, compared to just like, for a long time, I'm like, I just have to sit here and sit still. That didn't work all that well. You know what I mean? Because my mind would just pop, pop, pop. But if I go for a walk or something like that, it allows me to kind of calm stuff down, with that movement. And it really, really helps. I
But
do the
you
breath.
can calm stuff down with the breathing too. Like if you
Yeah,
just focus on maybe counting the breath or increasing your exhalations, there's tricks, there's little
that's the
breathing
one I've been
techniques.
doing. Yeah, that's the one
Hmm.
I've been doing where like you breathe in for 4 and then you hold for maybe 4 or 2. But it's more important that you breathe out longer than your inhale. And by doing that, it actually triggers the sympathetic nervous system. It's so, yeah, I mean, it
The
works.
parasympathetic. Yeah.
Yeah.
It slows your heart rate
Uh-huh.
immediately by exhaling longer. It sends a message to the heart to slow down, and that sends a message to the nervous system that I'm not in stress anymore.
Yeah. That's so
And it's
funny.
like
You
kind
gotta
of
like,
it's a circle, you know? So if you
yeah,
need to break the cycle, you can break it many ways. You can break it by being less stressed mentally. So even
yeah,
talk therapy can help with that. You can
yeah.
work on the breath, which will affect your mood.
Hmm.
And you can work on the body, which will also
Yeah. And
change
then it
your
helps your
thoughts.
sleep too. It helps your sleep. And then with your sleep being better, you're feeling better when you wake up. For me, meditation actually helps my dreams. If I don't meditate for a couple days, my PTSD dreams will get very, very graphic
Hmm.
and aggressive. And I wake up and I'm exhausted because I'm experiencing
Hmm.
all the emotions that you would feel in real life in those dreams, right? Where I'm dying. But if I meditate before bed, and this is the only reason I was desperate enough to meditate, is like I was at the end of my rope and I just didn't want to sleep because I didn't want to deal with the dreams. At my worst, I didn't want to be awake because that's when the flashbacks were happening and I was always scared and like a hiding, kind of deal. Um, but yeah, meditation definitely helps. And for me, there's multiple things I got to do. Like you said, everyone's just got to find their thing, but I encourage anyone listening to take a chance on something you don't know because it may just be what works for you. And it would just
Yep.
give a little bit of relief is a lot, just a little bit, you know what I mean? And with the breath work, you can find that pretty quickly. You could do that in your car. You could do that. I mean, it takes 3 minutes, I guess, or whatever,
Hmm.
less than that. um, But yeah, very, very cool. Now, one of the questions I like to ask is for all the listeners out there, if there's someone out there who's feeling hopeless, who maybe is experienced kind of like sort of what you experience, what's one of the things you would tell them to give them hope and keep them moving in the right direction?
The first thing um, I would say is that, you are not your story. You are not
Mm,
what happened to you. That's not who you really are.
Yep.
That behind this hopelessness, behind the maybe devastation, behind pain, behind the depression, behind all of that is a much deeper part that is perfect and whole, and you've just lost sight of it right now. But it's there. It's always there. So to not give up because it's hiding right now, that part of you, but there will be a time when you will find it. And the other thing I would say is that as you said that, I remember reading a book when I was in a really bad time, and I was kind of on the floor, kind of just crying and really feeling hopeless. I opened a book. I think the book was called When Things Fall Apart by Pema Chodron. She's a Buddhist teacher who
Okay.
also went through a trauma. And I highly recommend that book for people who feel really hopeless because I read the first sentence, it was a quote. I remember it very vividly. It was, "The only thing to fear is fear itself."
hmm
And I don't know, something in that just quieted in me. And I said, okay, I feel really shitty right now, but it's not always going to feel that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Really well
I'm just
said.
scared. Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Fear is powerful. Fear is very powerful. And I really like how you said that you're whole. You've just lost sight of it. I think that is really kind of another angle that we've never said it that way before, where like you just can't see it compared to, oh, you'll get back to being that person. It's like, oh, I am that person. I just can't see it right now. So there's an issue with like
Exactly.
yeah, and you're definitely not your story because things can happen to you, crazy things in this world which are totally out of your control. But what we've found is the cool thing is sometimes is some of these bad things can lead to our biggest periods of growth. They force you to kind of assess some things that you wouldn't have done before, and it turns out now that I look back, I'm like, I'm glad I went through what I went through. You know what I mean? Like, what a gift, what a blessing to get to experience the highs and the lows. And I know I'm saying that from a good point right now, and when you're low, it's not really as easy to
That's what I
say.
was
But
going to say. When you're in a bad place, you don't want to
yeah,
hear that from anyone. Like, oh,
right,
one day you'll be thankful this happened to you. No,
yeah, yeah,
not at that time. But I think
yeah,
That's sort of
understanding that
self-discovery.
there's so much more that's possible deep inside.
yeah,
And there's the pieces there. It's like, I think of it like a sculpture, like a big piece of stone that, you don't see the sculpture. You have to like chip away bit by bit
yeah,
at this hard rock on the outside. But it's there. You just
yeah,
have to uncover it. And it takes effort and skill and time and discipline.
yeah.
Um, and I
For
think just
me,
not to be
We say it a
alone.
lot. We say
Huh?
it a lot. We say it a lot. The blueprint is easy, but the action is hard.
Yeah.
yeah. Well, before we leave, where do we get the books? Where do we get these books?
On Amazon.
All right.
Go to Amazon. The easiest way, you can look up my name, Rachel Krentzman, and all my books will come up. I also have a website, rachelkrentzman.com, which has my newest book, the memoir, and all of the ways you can access it through all the channels that it's available.
Beautiful. And
Well, I
I'll put
will
all
look
that
it up.
information in the description of the episode and all that kind of stuff. And Honestly,
If I can
Rachel's been
just
an
say one
absolute.
more website,
Yeah,
the other website is happybackyoga.com, which not only has the books, but it has retreats that I do and courses that I offer. So that might also be a really good resource for people.
absolutely. Absolutely. Well,
Beautiful.
Rachel, it's been an absolute pleasure meeting you. Thank you so much for giving us some of your time. I know it's a little later in Israel than it is here. It's about to be 2 o'clock. What is it about to be 8 o'clock there?
9 p.m.
9.
9 p.m.
9.
Oh, wow.
Well,
Well,
thank you
have a
so
good night,
much.
Rachel. Thank you for your time.
Yep.
Thank you
And
so
I'm
much.
just,
It was really great. And I hope that this show inspires many people. It sounds like you guys are doing a great thing.
If it helps
oh,
just one, it's worth it, right?
yep. Just one. And if you liked it,
Totally.
pass it on. If this episode gave you hope, like, subscribe, share. Remember, you are not your circumstances, and on the inside, you are whole and healing is possible. Check out Rachel's new book, As Is, to hear more about her story. This is Shit Creek Survivors, bringing you resilience, tools for healing, and hope, especially for those navigating their own shit creek.